Distinguished participants and colleagues, welcome to you all. My name is Khin Ohmar, Chairperson of the Advisory Board of Progressive Voice. I'll be moderating today's event, Justice and Accountability for Myanmar, Expectations and Possibilities. Burmese interpretation is available, so please choose the interpretation button for those of you who would like to have interpretation. Today's event is organized jointly by the Forum Asia and Progressive Voice in conjunction with the ongoing 49th regular session of the UN Human Rights Council here in Geneva. Forum Asia, Progressive Voice, and our partner Myanmar civil society organizations from the ground have been engaging regularly with the United Nations, including the Human Rights Council here in Geneva, updating the human rights situation on the ground in Myanmar to different human rights mechanisms and the actors here in Geneva and as well. Since 2017, we've been calling on the UN to hold the Myanmar military accountable for genocide against the Rohingya and also crimes against humanity and war crimes against other ethnic minorities by international criminal accountability mechanisms. Our engagement include, for example, open letters to and meetings with the Human Rights Council members and observer states, as well as the Human Rights Council President Office and special procedures. Over 1 year since the Myanmar military initiated a violent coup d'etat, its brutal attempt to take control of the country has failed. In spite of the inhumane violent attacks, the people of Myanmar continue to resist the Myanmar military, steadfastly demonstrating their strong will to end the decades-long military tyranny and its impunity. The human rights situation in Myanmar has hit rock bottom. It cannot be reiterated enough that the same military that perpetrated genocide against the Rohingya in 2017 and grave atrocity crimes against ethnic communities for decades is now committing crimes against humanity and war crimes across the country. Yet, the international community, including the UN, has not responded with the immediacy and concerted efforts needed to end the military's violence and its failed coup attempt. Victims and survivors, past and present, have yet to see justice as perpetrators continue to enjoy impunity as they have for decades without being held to account. For over 15 years, the UN Human Rights Council has passed over 20 resolutions on Myanmar, mandating monitoring, documentation, and reporting on human rights violations. In March 2017, the Human Rights Council created the fact-finding mission, and fact-finding mission found credible evidence of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed by the Myanmar military. Following the FFM, the Human Rights Council in 2019 established the Independent Investigative Mechanism for Myanmar, which is currently collecting evidence of the most serious international crimes and violations of international law in Myanmar in preparation for criminal prosecution. Despite the overwhelming evidence of grave crimes that continue to be committed by the military with complete impunity, none of these mechanisms are mandated to or have jurisdiction to prosecute the perpetrators. Therefore, a full jurisdiction must be established, urging the evidence gathered to hold individuals within the Myanmar military accountable for the heinous crimes that they have committed. Yesterday, as you all have heard, the US government's announcement of determination of atrocities against the Rohingya in 2017 was a genocide is a long-awaited for the Rohingya community and suddenly, of course, most welcome. But urgent actions must be taken towards criminal prosecution for these crimes. Today, we are joined by distinguished speakers, His Excellency Mr. Aung, a Minister for Human Rights from National Unity Government, the legitimate government of Myanmar, Mr. Marzuki Darusman, member of the Special Advisory Council for Myanmar, and also former chair of the UN Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar. Ms. Razia Sultana, Rohingya human rights activist and founder of Rohingya Women Welfare Society. Mr. Salai, Deputy Executive Director of Khin Human Rights Organization, and Ms. Htoo, Program Director of Current Human Rights Group. The speakers from Myanmar will offer updates from the ground and also recommendations. This will be followed by Pak Marzuki with the Special Advisory Council for Myanmar's reflection, analysis, and recommendations on the UN's response to Myanmar crisis. Each speaker will take about 8 to 10 minutes, and we will have about 30 minutes for questions and answers, I hope. So with no further ado, no further delay, may I now call on to Salai Zogok to take the floor. Salai, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much, Ohmar. Good afternoon from India-Burma border. My name is Salai Zogok from the Khin Human Rights Organization. It is my great pleasure to be able to remotely participate in this important event on the sidelines of the 49th regular session of the UN Human Rights Council. I'd like to thank Forum Asia and Progressive Voice for putting together this event and assembling this panel so that we can echo and amplify voices from the ground. I'm here to speak primarily about the situation in the country's northwest, including Khin State, Sagaing, and Magwe regions, where the Myanmar military juntas have been relentlessly conducting a campaign of terror against the civilian population for the past many months now. We're here today simply asking for accountability for perpetrators of grave crimes and that some forms of justice be accorded to the victims of mass atrocities and ongoing serious breaches of human rights. The international community cannot afford to stand idly by while the Myanmar military regime is allowed to be engaged in acts of war crimes and crimes against humanity against the people of Myanmar. Any further failure to hold perpetrators to account for these crimes will be a serious mistake at this stage and can be viewed by the junta as an endorsement to its ever-growing brutal campaign against the people of Myanmar. So starting with this very council, the international community should start sending a clear message to the leaders of Myanmar military regime here and now that there are prices to pay for serious international crimes and that nobody, including General Min Aung Hlaing, is beyond the reach of international justice. The international community has more than enough evidence to prosecute the leaders of the military regime, and we are simply here asking that all civilized members of the international community stand united in sending a clear message that there will no longer be impunity for perpetrators of gross human rights violations in Myanmar. Even as we speak, the Tatmadaw is committing mass atrocities all across the country's northwest. In Khin State alone, where I come from, the junta has killed more than 200 civilians, arrested over 900 people, displaced over 100,000 people, or a fifth of the entire population of the state just within the last year. The Tatmadaw forces have burned or destroyed entire villages and towns, including over 1,000 homes in my own hometown of Tantlang. More towns and villages are becoming empty of its residents, and places of safety continue to shrink for civilians fleeing the Tatmadaw's campaign of terror and destruction. The only Christian majority state in a predominantly Buddhist Myanmar, Khin State has seen the destruction of over 50 churches and religious buildings over the last 1 year. Ladies and gentlemen, we can keep talking about these numbers and give you all the evidence there is, but what we ask of you today, what we ask of the world and of this council is a serious political will. we should ask ourselves how many lives have to be lost, how many lives have to be torn apart, how many homes have to burn, and how many have to suffer, how many more people have to flee, and how many mothers and children will have to suffer before we develop a serious political will to act on the situation in Myanmar. And I'm here with my colleagues from other parts of Burma. You will hear stories after stories about the destruction of lives, of properties, of everything that the people of Burma has. But today, what we are asking of you is your will to end the atrocities in Burma and to stop the Tatmadaw from committing further acts of violence against all the peoples of Myanmar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Salai. Also, your very clear ask of the international community, particularly from the Human Rights Council, the serious political will to act on to end the atrocities. That is the must that we really need to see sooner rather than later. And like this is something like everybody in Myanmar has been looking forward when this serious political will actually be based to act on. Thank you so much for this statement. Now, may I call on to Htoo from the Korean Human Rights Group to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad. Good evening, everyone. I'm not Htoo from Korean Human Rights Group. KHRG is working documenting human rights violation in Southern Myanmar almost 30 years. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today about the situation in current state. Heinous crimes and human rights violation committed by the Myanmar military against ethnic and religious minority have taken place for decades. From the start of the coup in February 2021, we civil society organizations have repeatedly called upon the Human Rights Council to take the necessary steps to hold the Myanmar military accountable for past and current crimes in order to end this long-standing cycle of impunity that allowed the Myanmar military to continue its war of terror against innocent civilians. As the situations across Myanmar degrade further every day, the need to establish jurisdictions to prosecute the grave crimes committed in Myanmar is not only necessary, but we can't wait no longer. Over the past 6 months, the situation has gone from bad to worse as the military junta increasingly tend to kill or ban or destroy all tactics. Ground and air attack on civilian areas have increased despite we call for no flying zone. Ground and air attack had resulted in the destructions of village home, churches, school, and monastery and medical facility, showing a complete disregard by the SAC for core principle of the international humanitarian law. Just a few days ago, SAC troops fired mortar on villagers during the religious event, killed 3 people, villagers, and seriously injuring 8. 8 airstrikes taking place in Ligego, we call in KNU administrative area, we call Duplaya district, where Myanmar government identify as a southern part of Myawaddy township. Since December 2021, airstrike happened 8 times. So imagine that a small place, nowhere to run for the people in that area, and 6 airstrike in Papong district since January 2022. Within a month, just a few days ago, we also received one more airstrike incident in Nyaunlepin district. So one villager in Likeko said that during the airstrike, the SEC dropped bombs and fire machine gun. The bullets and bomb fell from the sky, just like rain. And not only SEC troops bomb and share local have cleaned, soldiers have right and loot medical facility, depriving of villagers need for medicine and supply to treat their growing health needs. Ground attack in civilian area are resulting in increased death, injuries, including women, young children, mothers, and pregnant women. KHRG has increasingly received horrific image of the civilian casualty, including a young mother. Her 3-year-old baby, the head is partially blown off. Attack on civilians are becoming more deliberate in some area. SEC troops have prevented the safe exit of civilians in conflict zone and deliberately kept civilians there as protections against further attack, so they do not let villagers run away. SEC soldiers have increasingly made direct threats of retaliations against civilians, telling villagers that they will keep them all and burn down the whole village if attacked by KNLA, therefore turning civilians into retaliatory target of warfare. Until now, 170,000 of displaced people behind the airstrike and shelling and conflict throughout the current state since the coup. So with few only able to flee to Thailand in other safe place, and displaced villagers, which include pregnant women, elderly, and disabled, must often endure deplorable living conditions and frequently remain under threat of air attack and shelling and gunfire. We also receive forced labor, the use of civilians, particularly women, and as human she are becoming more systematic and widespread due to troop movement in an ethnic area. Between just August and September 2021, SEC troop and BGF troop from 2 army camps in the Thong district repeatedly made demand on local villagers. At times, they gather 100 villagers to carry ration and munitions and such as human shield as the soldiers are traveling between camps. Incident of torture and arbitrary arrest and violence that seem to be pure display of power for the purpose of intimidations are also increasingly being reported in rural area. Only in February 2022 in Duplaya district, SEC soldier arrest beat a local villager, and they threatened him that if you post this information on social media, if you post picture in the social media, we will burn down the whole village. So depriving villager for any attempt to seek justice. SEC has used arbitrary arrest to suppress and contain all opposition. SEC troops also been rounding up civilians on suspicion of PDF or KNLA affiliations, and then brutally torture them, killing them, and attempt to destroy resistant effort, as the past junta did under the forecast strategy in current state. The deliberate and arbitrary killing of civilians continue to increase. In many cases, villagers are being shot while working in their farms and plantation without any reason. We also receive report about looting by SEC in current state increase and becoming more widespread. SEC troops have extended their reach into ethnic area and set up the temporary army camps in and around a rural village. They have stolen villager livestock and crops for their own consumption. They have also unlawfully seek and damage villager property. So while displaced villager continue to be at higher risk of looting, in February 2022, SEC troop based in Kokore town traveled to rural village, loot over 100 houses while the house owner have fled. And that they carried the looted item back to town with the military truck. They took the civilian household items such as food, livestock, money, and they also destroyed items that they didn't take. So if the villager return, the displaced people, when they return home, they often have nothing left at their home. So the past has shown us that without any accountability, the Myanmar military will not stop committing heinous crimes, and in fact, we only further the level of abuse. So it is for that reason we urgently call upon the Human Rights Council to explore all possible routes to seek accountability and to further support or establish mechanisms that will permit investigations, prosecutions of crime occurring against Myanmar ethnic minority. CSO and other human rights organizations have already provided and continue to provide the necessary evidence of atrocity crimes committed by Myanmar military to UN bodies. It is time for active steps to be taken by the Human Rights Council to ensure that the justice mechanism move forward without delay. So how much longer must Myanmar people wait for justice and end to this atrocity? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Htoo, for your statement and intervention. And both you and Salai have already shared with all of us the details of what's happening on the ground, these atrocities, where the evidences are more than enough. And we really thank you, the KHRG, CHRO, for all your decades-long work, dedication, and you keep documenting these heinous crimes and atrocities and all these grave human rights violations. Like you said, Htoo, you've been, in fact, providing these documentations to the international human rights bodies and the mechanisms, and particularly also to the Human Rights Council. So you're very right, as we all been raising, is that if not now, when? And Myanmar people cannot wait any longer. And there must be this accountability to hold this military to stop this violence. So with that, thank you so much. I would like to now call on to Razia Sultana from the RWWS. Thank you. Please take the floor, Razia.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Progressive Voice and Forum Asia, to arranging this meeting. My name is Razia Sultana, a Rohingya human rights activist and founder of RW Welfare Society. I work in the camp in Bangladesh with Rohingya women and youth. Since 2016, I have been documenting the horrific atrocities committed against Rohingya women and girls by the Myanmar military, particularly sexual violence, calling for accountability for these crimes. The report, Rape by Command, in 2018 that I work on documenting victims and survivors of rape and sexual violence committed by the military, exposed a clear systematic pattern of mass rape and gang rape that was being ordered by Myanmar military commanders. The findings in this report were affirmed by the UN Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar, which found that military soldiers routinely and systematically employed rape, gang rape, and other violent and forced sexual acts against women, girls, boys, men, and transgenders, people in blatant violation of international human rights law. This is the same military that is now committing crime against humanity and war crime against the people of Myanmar. As noted by the special reporter in this most recent reporting to the Human Rights Council, Myanmar military has long used sexual violence and other crimes against women as a weapon of war. Since the coup, Myanmar military has committed rape and sexual violence against women detained during interrogation. Women throughout the country continue to experience crime against humanity and war as the military systematically rapes women and girls. It is vital that the perpetrators of this grave crime be held to account and justice served to the victims and survivors, to put an end to the decades-long impunity enjoyed by the Myanmar military. In pursuing accountability, victims and survivors of gender-based violence must be offered further support, both inside and outside Myanmar, for their basic needs for larger issues of protection. The military failed coup has exacerbated the situation for the Rohingya and prospect for their voluntary, safe, and dignified return. I am sure you have all seen the picture of the miserable, crowded living condition of the refugee camps in Cox's Bazar. You will have read about the suffering and death caused by flooding, landslides, and massive fires in Squil camp. In addition to this, basic food rations have been distractly cut to the Rohingya refugees during the past 2 years. Shortages in aid have heavily affected refugees. Daily life as opportunities for livelihood have been severely limited. Refugees are receiving a little as less than $11 per month per head for food through a cash card. They must use these cards at the World Food Program food office in the camps, where the price of food can be 50% higher than the outside market. Previously, refugees were given actual food supplies, including rice, lanterns, and oil at a double the amount that can now be purchased through the cash cards. This means that their food supply have been cut in half, causing nutrition beneficiary for the families without saving and other income sources. To make matter worse, COVID lockdown has meant no way for refugees to earn income outside the camp, and with very little workable, very little work available inside the camp. Over the past 2 months, over 3,000 shops run by refugees inside in the camp have been bulldozed, cutting off further supply of sources of income. Other supplies, including menstruation pads and even medical service are being cut. It is impossible for refugees to live on such a major aid, and my brother and my sister are starving their life in the camp. I have heard from my current sisters along the Thailand-Burma border that similar food shortage has been faced in the refugee camps there. Due to cuts in donor funding over the years, donors must prioritize funding and supporting refugees and those who have been displaced along the borderline to fulfill their basic humanitarian needs, as more people are forced to flee due to military ongoing attack. For the Rohingya in Bangladesh, while our basic needs are not being met in the camps, we have also been left without option for education. Recently, Bangladesh Authority and UNHCR, they opened formal education, but we are thinking about the women. How can we bring them in school because of security? Potentially, the entire generation Rohingya children are not be left behind without education, because we know education is the key of our future community and country. In the camp and with no prospect of to return, the international community must do more to support to Rohingya, including by offering resettlement opportunities for Rohingya who may seek voluntary resettlement. A coordinated effort that allows large number of refugees to resettle must be offered by governments to provide alternative solution to the situation Rohingya are facing in the camp. Inside Myanmar, there remain approximately 600,000 Rohingya in Rakhine whose rights continue to be systematically violated. Over 130,000 remain in open-air prison, denied their right to move freely. Since the coup, the military have further cracked down on freedom of movement for Rohingya. According to the Women Peace Network, the junta arbitrarily arrested over 800 Rohingya, including 100 children. IDPs, including the Kamal Muslim in Rakhine State, face deplorable condition. Common IDPs and Kwektalun IDP camp who fled violence in Kwektapu Township in 2012 remain displaced in dire condition after 10 years in displacement. The common IDP have long sought for long-term housing option in their place of origin in Kwektapu Township or place of other choosing. However, recent reports indicate that the junta are attempting to resettle them where they may face more vulnerability due to the isolated location. The current IDP housing are in poor condition and is in urgent need to be restoration. The camp face the coast and the point of the flooding as well as high wind and rain during the monsoon season. Other IDP cities, including the Htoo, where Rohingya IDPs reside, remain the deplorable squalor condition. These IDP continue to face life-threatening risks to their physical safety. While the fighting between the Myanmar Arakan army has decreased over the past year, the implementation of the policies of genocide continues, such as the use of national verification card, and Rohingya lives remain at risk. As the Myanmar military continues to commit grave crimes, it is important that the MOU between Myanmar and Bangladesh be reviewed. Taking stock of the current context, returning Rohingya to Myanmar without addressing the current crisis and resolving the root cause of decades-long suffering of the Rohingya would be to send them back to the killing field from which they fled with no guarantee for their safety, while lending legitimacy to the junta who desperately craves international recognition. I made an intervention at the UN Security Council Open Divide on Sexual Violence in Conflict nearly 4 years ago, with a call to hold the military to account. While the Security Council continued to fail in referring Myanmar to the ICC, other avenues for accountability have opened, including the case of forced deportation at the ICC, genocide case at the ICJ, and case of the universal jurisdiction in Argentina. Well, it was long overdue. We all welcome step taken by the United States to announce the crime committed against the Rohingya as genocide. Thanks. But this must translate into more tangible action for justice and accountability for Rohingya. The international community and the UN must explore all possible way to initiate UN must explore all possible way to initiate criminal prosecution of Myanmar military leaders and hold them accountable for genocide and atrocities crimes. Meanwhile, member states must further pursue efforts towards global arms embargo and sanction about the economics to be imposed against the Myanmar military, their business partner and network of arms dealers. All effort must be made to stop the military from committing atrocities against the people of Myanmar, including the Rohingya. Finally, while the National Unity Government, NUG, has made some steps toward addressing the historical oppression, persecution, and grave violation against the Rohingya, it is important that they take concrete action. This includes amendment of the 1982 citizenship law and including Rohingya in all discussion for further of Myanmar. Only until we are fully included in the future of Myanmar can we begin to see a genuine federal democracy and equality for all people of Myanmar. I thank you.
Thank you, Razia, for your statement and also making the clear calls and recommendations. As you know, the Human Rights Council, in their deliberation and discussions, of course, for those of us, including yourself, that we have been bringing the issue of the citizenship as not a pathway to citizenship. It is restoration of the citizenship of the Rohingya people. It's their birthright that they are belonging to Myanmar. So it's something that we keep also advocating. But also, the other thing that we are in this council, during the council time, that we are also raising is that how it is important to recognize that solving the current crisis in Myanmar is how essential to also ensure safe, voluntary, sustainable, and dignified return of the Rohingya from the Bangladesh and elsewhere. For them to be able to return home, we need to be able to resolve the current crisis and hold this military to account. That's the only way. So that's one thing that we are also bringing forth in our advocacy. And I think, for the council, they have looked into, for including this, that the mechanisms that we were able to get, the fact-finding mission, the IIM, of course, it's all come from all of these atrocity crimes happen to the Rohingya community, to look into that. But like you said, and all of you said, that is not enough. At this point in particular, the next step is the concrete action to hold this military to account and end these atrocities. So thank you for this. Now I would like to call on His Excellency Minister Aung, who is a Minister of Human Rights from National Unity Government. So Minister, please take the floor. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. This is Aung. I'm the Union Minister of Human Rights of the NUG. This is a great honor to join another side event on the human rights situation in Myanmar. I have joined several, human rights talk and other kinds of the side events. This is a really great pleasure to meet, to understand and to get the update information about what is happening in Khin state and current state, and as well as very, glad to hear the strong recommendation and suggestion from our sister from Bangladesh border, Union Minister of Human Rights, and also the representative of the National Unity Government of Myanmar. I also acknowledge my ST panelists, as I mentioned before. It is now more than a year since the failed coup d'etat of 1st February 2021. In a report, the High Commissioners on Human Rights described the situation in Myanmar as the human rights catastrophes. Catastrophes is the same word that the High Commissioners used last September at the Human Rights Council, Section 48. And yet, as the Human Rights Commissioner herself concedes, Myanmar is caught in the downward spiral of violence characterized by the increasingly brutal repression. The UN, it seems, is running short of both words and actions. So I do agree that, there's lots of work to do, especially by the UN, for concrete action to solve the problem inside the country. I do not say this to question the effort of the High Commissioners and her efforts. We are strong supporters of the OHCHR. Rather, it is rebuke of the continuing failure of the UN's mechanisms, especially the Security Council, to address the military junta's crime. In a horrifying act of terror on the Christmas Eve in the Khin division, and also in Loiko in Karenni division, Karenni state, gender forces shot, stabbed, or set fire to as many as 42 civilians, including women, children, and humanitarian workers. The most the Security Council could muster was a press statement. The session, special reporter, Mr. Chair, that include stabbings, shocking, electric devices, burning of skins, the deprivation of food and water, two teenage daughters by military bombardment. His daughters, he says, are thrown into different directions. The stomach and lower bodies blown to pieces. This is one of the incidents taking place in Karenni state and many other parts of the country by military jet fighter. The special reporters go on to record more military acts on terror, such as the burning of bodies, the ramming of peaceful demonstrators with vehicles, the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war, as my previous speaker mentioned, the continued dehumanization and exclusion of the Rohingya people, the hostage-taking and use of children as human shield, and the likely targeting the LGBTIQ detainees because of their sexual orientation. Significantly, the High Commissioners, the IIMM, and the Special Reporter of Myanmar has all now concluded that the military junta has carried out probably international crimes of the highest order. And yet, at the heart of these atrocities lie a deeper shame that they have long been known to the Human Rights Council and other UN forums, yet allowed to escalate. Just as shameful is the Secretary General's report on the implementation of the Rosenthal recommendations. It is a blue wash that entirely ignored the human rights situation in Myanmar. A repeat of past UN failures seems inevitable if this approach continues. The costs were borne out in the civilian light, only to be followed by the renewed pledge of never again and a cycle of international inquiry. Let's talk about accountability. Today's focus is on justice and accountability. Myanmar accepts without question its obligation under international law and it's committed to securing justice and accountability. We welcome the High Commissioner's recognition of the National Unity Government's filing of declaration under Article 12(3) of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, and our engagement with the International Court of Justice in the proceeding initiated by the Gambia under the Genocide Convention. We also welcome the growing international recognition of the atrocities against the Rohingya people, including the United States determination that the military's violence against the Rohingya minority in 2017 amounts to genocide and crime against humanity. As the Ministry of Human Rights' own report we issued last week confirms, these early steps are very far from the delivering justice to victims or accountability to perpetrators. So I'd like to make concrete actions. Along with the other previous speakers, I called for the following action. First, Myanmar NUG support Progressive Voices call for the establishment of the jurisdiction for grave crimes in Myanmar. The UN Secretary General should explore the feasibilities of the establishment by the General Assembly or the Human Rights Council of an ad hoc tribunal to support accountability for alleged violation of international law in Myanmar. Second, to prevent further UN failures, the Secretary General must establish an independent and wider-ranging inquiry led by international experts into the UN's progress follow-up to the Rosenthal report. The inquiry must include a focus on the UN's response since 1st February 2021 and produce and deliver to the Human Rights Council a comprehensive public report with finding and recommendation. Third, the Human Rights Council Section 49, Item 4 resolution on Myanmar should request the Security Council to refer the situation in Myanmar to the ICC, and then to comment proceeding to list the military juntas as a terrorist organization. Fourth, the ICC should accept the NUG's Article 12.3 declaration under the Rome Statute. We call for the support of ICC member states to support our declaration. Fifth, the International Court of Justice must kick the military out of the Gambia case under the Genocide Convention. Ambassador Ujo Moton, as the highest Myanmar representative to the UN, should be confirmed as Myanmar new alternative state agent. The NUG would engage with the court and parties in good faith and are committed to providing justice and reparation to the Rohingya regardless of the outcome of the ICJ case. 6. Individual UN member states should exercise universal jurisdiction over the international crimes committed in Myanmar. Military members continue to travel abroad, which presents opportunities to secure arrest, including through the issuance of Interpol red notices. And finally, the Human Rights Council Bureau must accredit Ambassador Ujo Moton and other representatives that he nominates on behalf of Myanmar at the Council. This would be consistent with Ujo Moton's continued participation rights at the General Assembly, of which the HRC is statutory body. For 3 consecutive regular human rights sections now, the people of Myanmar has been awarded an empty seat, rendering them voiceless. We will not be ignored. We will not be silent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Mew. Thank you so much also for all these very strong and clear recommendations and the calls. Also, we are very glad to hear that the government is on the same page with us as the civil society on this call for the accountabilities. And yes, also those of us who are in Geneva, it's really sad for us to see that Myanmar seat has been empty in the council. Like you said, the Ambassador Jomoton from New York should be able to take the seat and represent the people of Myanmar and the country. So this is something that we really hope that the council will address it as soon as possible, so that in the next upcoming session, the Myanmar seat will not be empty, but represented by the Ambassador Jomoton and his representatives, delegations in representing the people and the country of Myanmar. So thank you for this. Now may I call on Park Marzuki. Park, thank you so much for joining us. We are very honored to have you with us in this session. As especially you led this international independent fact-finding mission on Myanmar, where now particularly in the current crisis time, the IIMM that actually being born out of the fact-finding mission work and recommendations, and now also the pretty much all of us keep referring back to the fact-finding mission's work and the recommendations that you have made. So it's really also for us to be very we're very also honored to see the 3 UN experts and previous mandate holders such as yourself, Professor Yang Lee and Mr. Chris Sidoti. Sidoti has come to join this the Special Advisory Council for Myanmar. So we are very fortunate to continue to have you with us. So Park, with no further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ohmar. Thank you very much for the kind words and the introduction of the Special Advisory Council on Myanmar. We got together a year ago at the initiative of Professor Yang Lee, and both Chris and I, of course, because of the fact-finding mission report, we felt that we just couldn't walk away from the issue that we've been addressing for so many years. And this brings me to the point where, listening to the speakers before, the impression, of course, is that the resolve to see this through has been very sustained up until now. In fact, I think there's much more momentum at the moment, and on the basis of what has been proposed earlier, and in the interest of perhaps going into the question and answers session, I would not like to hold it up other than just to draw attention to a point that has emerged in the recent period as to how we should proceed. Of course, we have listened very carefully to what the Minister Myo has stated with regard to the need for the UN and the Council to create an independent inquiry entity to look into where things stand at the moment with regard to the settlement of the Myanmar situation. Now, couple of things, Ohmar, and that is that I would like to start by just mentioning an instance, a different instance with regard to the situation in Myanmar, by relating this very quickly to the situation in North Korea. I had looked into that also for some years. And we thought that everything about North Korea that could be said about North Korea has been said. Now, everything about Myanmar that can be said about Myanmar has been said. The difference between North Korea is that it is now frozen in the situation in the peninsula, whereas I think the situation in Myanmar is so much more fluid that further actions are entirely possible, and that the Myanmar situation will not be or will not end as an isolated crisis apart from the mainstream attention that had been given to other crises by the international community. Now, two things have happened in the recent weeks. One, of course, is the situation in the Ukraine. I'm mentioning this because what is happening there, and listening to what has been said just now by all the speakers, recalling ourselves of the situation in Myanmar in August 2017, and even before that. The situation in Ukraine is the situation in Myanmar writ large. The response has been exceptional, certainly, one notices that. But more to the point, what is happening there is that we are all involved in an unlimited war because the aggressor, Russia, has placed the civilian population in unlimited crisis. And that is exactly what is happening in Myanmar. The junta is placing the civilian population in Myanmar in unlimited risk. And therefore, we are engaged in unlimited war with the junta. This needs to be pointed out to the international community that what comes out of that is certain obligations to address this in a way that effectively moves things forward. And the Ukraine war has given us greater clarity of what is happening in Myanmar. And it's very tempting to draw parallels of what is happening there and what is happening in Myanmar. But having said that, I think we have a situation where a momentum is now emerging that will allow the Myanmar situation to be addressed in a much more effective way. But we have to ensure that all these years, discussions about what to do have somewhat gone astray. And the report of the Secretary General of the UN, of course, is evident that the UN is losing momentum on this situation in Myanmar. Now, to pinpoint on a trajectory that Myanmar, the situation in Myanmar has to be restored to, there has been some thinking in this past period that the Human Rights Council, and this is reflecting on what Minister Myo and our speakers have indicated and stated, that there is a need for a renewed momentum within the council to address the situation in Myanmar. And that cannot be other than a renewed momentum on an accountability trajectory. Now, to be brief, what is being advocated here is that the Human Rights Council should set up a jurisdiction to continue on where all efforts in the past have left off, and that is to then, on the basis of what the IIMM, the International Investigation Mechanism on Myanmar, that has been working for the last 3 years, have been able to amass in terms of evidence that the IIMM is now able then to undertake the task that was entrusted to that entity, and that is to prepare the ground for prosecutions. And what is missing here is exactly the jurisdiction for prosecutions to be undertaken. Now, I think the thrust should be that within the coming period, the Human Rights Council should take the initiative to set up a tribunal within the council on the basis of its mission and on the basis of its mandate, that having established a IIMM, it is also mandated to set up a tribunal as a corresponding entity to enable the IIMM to proceed with its mission, and for the jurisdiction, the tribunal, to undertake prosecution on the basis of evidence collected by the IIMM. The debate or the argument that the Human Rights Council is able to set up a tribunal is compelling. We will go into that perhaps in the question of answer, why we shouldn't fall back on the ICC, why we shouldn't fall back on the Security Council, why not on the General Assembly. The question now really is, why is not the Human Rights Council mandated to set up a tribunal? And that is a path to push forward as we go into the next period of getting the momentum going on further with regard to settling and addressing the Myanmar crisis. Well, with that, I will just perhaps call upon ourselves to really mobilize efforts so that within the coming sessions of the Human Rights Council, this track is laid out, and that the Human Rights Council is then on track towards setting up a jurisdictional tribunal to try the perpetrators, which the fact-finding mission has found to have been culpable in acts of genocide during that period on the Rohingyas. Having said that, of course, we welcome the United States statement, an announcement that what happened 5 years ago, mind you, 5 years ago, has now become clear to the United States that it was in fact a genocide that took place there. Now, of course, as we move forward, we will have to also settle all the other issues, residual issues, with regard to the situation in Myanmar. And it is now, I think, imperative that we move on this so that alongside the situation in Myanmar, which is in a stalemate between the democracy movement and the junta, that additional pressure is exerted on the junta on the basis of an accountability process that will be shaped out with the possible establishment of a tribunal by the Human Rights Council. Let me end there, Ohmar, and so we could then perhaps go into a Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Park. As you have clearly outlined for us, also a roadmap of next step. We also are in complete agreement with you as the Myanmar civil society, as you have heard from us. For us also, we see that the setting up the tribunal is the next logical step. And we come back to the Human Rights Council because basically the council actually even took the unprecedented decision to set up the IIMM. And in fact, that is already a given for the council now, inevitable to look into what is possible, all possible ways. So with that, as you said, we also really want the Human Rights Council, like you said, they should really take the initiative to set up the tribunal. Then there is this need to review momentum on accountability trajectory, as you have said. So we really hope, like all of the, documentations that IIMM already collected, and there must be somewhere these documentations are going to go with all the purpose of ending the impunity, holding the perpetrators to account. I think with that, thank you so much, Park, for all your sharing. Now, all our participants, colleagues who are joining and listening and joining us, I will open the Q&A, question and answer session. Some of you have already dropped your questions in the chat box, but also those of you who have not, please do so using the Q&A box. And then please do raise your questions or comments if you want, but I will be reading from here. So there are a few questions in my hand right now. I will go ahead and read it out for anyone, including, a couple of questions are actually directed to the National Unity Government, but I would like to actually give the floor to all the speakers to see if any of you would like to also respond to this. So first question, it says, thanks to Progressive Voice for hosting this wonderful panel discussion. No doubt daily atrocities is increasing day by day in Myanmar. Lack of accountability from successive governments, which Hunter has a major role in the crucial fact that lead to current sufferings for people of Myanmar. US has also determined such crimes as genocide, particularly committed on Rohingya. My question is, how does current legitimate NUG government plan legal measures to address impunity and accountability? Maybe Minister Myo, if you would like to take the first, but also Park, Marzuki, and other speakers, please do also feel free to take the floor for this question. No, Minister Myo.
Thank you for the question. Actually, I type it up the answer, but I will repeat again saying that. Okay, as NUG and also my ministry, particularly, primarily working on the safe documentation of human rights cases, because these are the evidence for future accountability and justice systems. So we are collecting this information, make sure that these are strong cases and evidence-based information. So that is what we're doing. We are working together with the people on the ground, sending that information, verification, and also preparing the very good system, data management system. But this issue, these cases should not be stored in the computer or for the data system. It should be used for the future, justice accountabilities. So NUG, as I mentioned before, we are engaging closely together with the different UN mechanisms for sharing information and providing the cases for the future United Nations the actions, particularly at the Human Rights Council, General Assembly, and also sending our message for the Security Council. This is one thing. At the same time, we clearly mentioned about our, the accepting and welcome the jurisdiction of both ICC and ICJ. We welcome and we accept their jurisdiction because our domestic jurisdiction inside the country is not functioning at all. It is totally controlled by the military, and also we cannot guarantee the justice under this situation. So we are, opening doors and welcome the jurisdiction of the ICC and ICJ to come and investigate the cases, to verify the cases, and to make a proper proceeding for their own judgment. So NUG is very much committed to cooperate for investigation, fact-finding, providing some kind of assistance they may need, and then willing to cooperate the decision made by themselves. So this is our future things. And also at the same time, we, as I mentioned, we are ready to work together with any future universal jurisdiction cases. Now so far it is only in Argentina for Rohingyas genocide. We are willing to cooperate, but at the same time, we are finding other possible universal jurisdictions for all different kinds of atrocities by the military. So we also need to cooperate with the local law firms and using a universal jurisdiction. So this is the current issue. And also, this is not enough. Thinking about the future, well, we are calling for the Federal Democratic Union and then the constitution that respects the equal rights and protection for everyone. So this is the planning for future transitional justice and justice in the future. So we are closely working together, the guarantee of equal rights for everyone in the country, and also bringing the transitional justice for the perpetrators, and also building a stronger judicial system when the new civilian government is restored. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Myo. Does anybody would like to also respond to this question? I don't see any hand from other speakers. In that case, may I move to the next question? The next question is, during these days, some political actors are trying to advocate for having political dialogues with the junta. As a citizen of Myanmar, I'm really concerned that those dialogues can create the impunity for the perpetrators who intentionally committed the human rights violations in Myanmar. May I get your view on having the dialogues with the junta? Anyone would like to take the floor now? Minister Myo, Park Marzuki, yes.
Ohmar, just quickly,
Yes, Park,
maybe this is a moment to broaden the discussions and to look at ongoing efforts to address the situation there in Myanmar on the basis of certain understandings that have been reached over the past period, 1 year and beyond. Clearly, of course, the international community has been seized on this. And at the same time, of course, this has also then moved the countries around the region here in Southeast Asia, ASEAN, to also act on the situation and it's known, of course, that during these days, some initiatives are being contemplated by the special envoy to somehow try to start a process within Myanmar on the basis of a consensus that was reached a year ago. Now, this is having a bit of a pushback from inside the country, but also the effort has not been as vigorous as we wanted it to be. And one point, of course, is that ASEAN has called for a settlement that involves all the parties to the situation, to the conflict, to the crisis. And that, of course, will have to be taken on the basis of recognition that the NUG is the legitimate government of Myanmar. And that therefore, it will have to be a process that is led by the NUG together with the special envoy. And so before we discuss about dialogue with the junta or whatever the case may be, it is very important to establish who among the parties that is mentioned in the consensus are legitimately and justified in taking part in the process of cessation of violence and eventually leading to a settlement of the situation within the country. And so we should take this in a step-by-step process. And it would seem that the NUG may have to take the lead on this if this is going to get anywhere. And therefore, it's called upon the special envoy to implement the consensus faithfully in spirit, and that is that one way or another, all the parties to the conflict will have to be brought together. But at the same time, of course, recognizing that the NUG is the legitimate government of Myanmar.
Thank you, Park, for this response. And Minister Myo, Salai, Htoo, Razia, anyone who would like to take the floor on this question? Minister Myo? No?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, the Park mentioned it very well about this question, and that the answer is very, very right. And also that, representation is also important. Like you mentioned that NUG is a legitimate government. At the same time, NUCC, that, another, National Unity Consultative Council, that is also should be there in the dialogue because they are representing different, players and important person in that, in the future process of the country. So NUCC, and also we cannot forget the ethnic people. Ethnic representation is also important. Also, these are the people that should be in the dialogue, and also making the voice of the voiceless. It is very important. We cannot bring everyone together, but having a dialogue with the different groups on the ground. Usually, their voice are ignored. That is, that we should have a kind of channel of communication, making these kind of voices, and then reflect this kind of voices for the dialogue. And when we have a issue of the discussion. That's why I like to add it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. If I may, as a moderator, taking the opportunity, I think the question actually is coming is like, without holding this military to account, what kind of dialogue are we actually looking forward to? I think that's sort of the question that's been lingering among the civil society as well. I think also the past 10 years experience of this negotiated power sharing experience already told all of us that power sharing with the military is not going to resolve our country's root causes. So I think the question is also in that dialogue, what are we actually like, where is this dialogue if this military is still left, untouched? I think that may be something to respond to, if that's okay with Minister Myo, maybe, or any of our civil society. Salai Sok, would you like to take the floor?
Sure, if I may. Dialogue should always lead to a solution, and we haven't seen any genuine interest from the military regime that they want to really solve the country's problem through dialogue. And people have tried to respond to its brutal tactics by peaceful protest and using all kinds of means. And the only language that the military regime seems to be understanding is through armed resistance. And I don't think that dialogue for the sake of dialogue is any worthy pursuit here. It's also about the timing of things. And at this stage, the military doesn't seem to be interested in any form of dialogue with anyone outside of its own, circle. Thank you.
Thank you, Salai Sok, also for your response. So if I don't see any hands from other two speakers, may I actually now read a statement from one of the participants? So allow me to read this before I get into the next round of questions. I'm Zafar Ahmed Abdul Ghani, President of Myanmar Ethnic Rohingya Human Rights Organization in Malaysia, a human rights defender, and would like to thank you all for speakers and all panelists. 1 year after the Myanmar military coup, the Myanmar people continue to be victims at the military's hands and suffer so much. The Rohingya suffer the most as the Rohingya genocide is ongoing for long decades. The world is watching now long the Myanmar people will suffer. We will be witnessing how long the perpetrators will be held accountable. This is beyond our expectation without strong commitment from the mandated body to end the Rohingya genocide and atrocities in Myanmar. We regret the ongoing killing, torture, kidnap, extortion, arrest and detention against the Myanmar people is still ongoing. There's no sign of improvement in the situation in Myanmar, and the external pressure does not seem to be effective. This requires more significant measures by the mandated body to deal with the genocidal regime. We urge the United Nations, its agencies and member states, as well as NGOs, CSOs, CBOs, and the rest of the people on earth to hold those responsible for Rohingya genocide and atrocities in Myanmar to accountable as it affecting each of us. MERHROM welcomes the U.S. Rohingya genocide determination. We deeply hope that this will be translated into actions without further delay. We believe U.S. can do a lot more to stop long decades of Rohingya genocide. We deeply hope other countries will join U.S., make a formal determination on the Rohingya genocide, taking real action to stop the Rohingya genocide without further delay. With that, I have a 3 set of questions, if I may direct to Pak Marzuki. Why should the Human Rights Council be the body to establish a jurisdiction and not the Security Council or General Assembly? What will a special tribunal on Myanmar mean for the International Criminal Court? What will it determine? Will it undermine the court? How would you use the existing treaties, example, Paris Peace Agreement on Cambodia conflict in 1991 to solve the current crisis in Myanmar? Pak Marzuki, if you will be,
Yes, Ohmar, let me just start, I think some of us here may want to also be part of the conversation. Now, why should the Human Rights Council establish the tribunal? This is a matter of expediency, a pragmatic decision on the basis of the fact that we are now into our third, fourth, or fifth year into this issue, and accountability has yet to be exerted on the perpetrators. And we see that if there is no breakthrough in the Human Rights Council, we cannot expect anything to happen in New York in the Security Council nor in the General Assembly unless an initiative is undertaken in Geneva in the Human Rights Council. And going back to first principles regarding the mission of the Human Rights Council as an organ of the United Nations, the notion that the Human Rights Council is mandated to do so flows out from the fact that it has that mission, that sole mandate to address human rights issues in behalf of the United Nations as a whole. And that therefore, to complement the IIMM that has been in operation for the last 2 or 3 years, it is only logical that an entity that needs to be set up is precisely a jurisdiction that will allow the IIMM that was established by the Human Rights Council to undertake its next step, and that is to, on the basis of preparing the ground for prosecution, to then the Human Rights Council deciding on a jurisdiction where these prosecutions can take place. Now we know that if this is taken up in the Security Council, that will be a non-starter because of the veto of Russia and China. Now the ICC, I think, is somewhat slow in addressing this issue, although initial investigations have been done by the previous prosecutor with regard to the situation in Bangladesh and the borders of Myanmar. But nothing has come out of that. And therefore, while of course this is a route to be taken, and it is being undertaken by the NUG by a declaratory act to be part of the Rome Statute, the situation may not be as conducive as it was in the past, if only because of the multiple crises that the international community is going through, especially in the Ukraine. And therefore, the routes towards jurisdiction may only be open within the Human Rights Council, and that is the rationale for an initiative to be taken in the council.
Thank you, Park. Also, Minister Myo, Siama Htoo, Siasok, and also Siama Razia, if you would like to take the floor on this. Before that, let me just add one more question, Park, also from our dear friend Chris Liwa. She says here, it is essential to have a judicial mechanism to prosecute perpetrators, such as a Security Council referral to ICC or a UN tribunal, as proposed by Park Marzuki. IIMM collect and preserve evidence, but this is a confidential process. However, will it be important as an interim step to advocate for a new FFM or Commission of Inquiry to continue monitor and document as an independent mechanism across all of Myanmar and report publicly like in Syria? Park, would you like to also take this question? Thank you.
Yes, I think, Ohmar, this is something that needs to be clarified because it is very tempting to set up another Commission of Inquiry or a fact-finding mission. But that phase has been passed. And if we recall that a fact-finding mission took at least another year before action was taken by the US Council to set up a IIMM. Now, if we are to set up another commission of inquiry or a fact-finding mission, it will take at least another 9 months for the entity to complete its task mandated by the Council. And it would probably end up at the same conclusions that all special rapporteurs, the Secretary General, the fact-finding mission have reached in the past. And that is that the situation in Myanmar is such that it is clear that accountability actions need to be taken without delay. So I'm afraid that if another fact-finding mission or an inquiry is set up, that it will at least delay the process for another 9 months to 1 year. And that is not, I think, the path we would like to go.
Thank you so much, Park. Thank you, Minister Myo, Siama Tutu, Siasa, anyone, Siama Razia, anything you would like to respond?
I just want to call.
Okay.
Sorry, Razia, please go ahead.
Yes.
No, I just give the thank you to everyone. And one thing I already shared about this inside the IDP camps issue. I think we are only expressing our in any event, but we didn't see any practical initiative. How can we save those people, those who are inside in Myanmar, IDP camp? These are also Myanmar citizen, and it's not only the Rohingya. There are so many other ethnics, even the Kaman also. So what can we do for them? Because our minister, Aung, you are here. So what is? I'm not thinking about within overnight or this situation we can handle, but we have to think about our future plan. Because you are now the NUG government, they are accepting as a Rohingyas. Thank you so much. But there are so many gaps within Rohingya and other ethnic. So we have to be one of you, because we are out of this Myanmar issue, out of from decade, and everyone say we are stateless, we are not ethnic groups, but the truth is we are belong their country. So now what can we do, and how can we collaborate together with all ethnic groups? So this is my best. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this, Razia. Before Minister Myo, before you answer, I would like to inform everyone, I have received so many comments, so many questions, and with the very limited time that we have, please forgive me that I may not be able to, I will not be able to address all of the questions from the floor. But what we will do is we will actually address your questions and comments, and we'll post it on our Facebook page so that you can actually look to that. We will do that. But saying this, what I would like is for Minister Myo to respond to Sister Razia question. And then after that, I would like to give the floor to the final remarks for all the speakers to take about 1 or 2 minutes. Then we will close today's session, if that's okay with you all. So with that, Minister Myo, please take the floor.
Okay, thank you for the question again. That is very important for us, because that long history of discrimination, the practice of impunity, is a big issue for solving the problems. So that we have to do that, good exercise. What are the root causes to make that kind of problem on the ground? So one of the finding we found is the citizenship law. That is really discriminatory, and there's a lot of practice make them the vulnerable group like Rohingya and many other ethnic groups suffer the situation like this. So in our declaration, we clearly mentioned that that 1982 citizenship law should be reviewed and repealed, and all the flaws or all the weakness make that kind of discriminatory practice should be abolished. and then make sure that the new citizenship law based on the equality and the new status of recognizing citizenship as the birth, not by the race, should be practiced. So, but this is our commitment to show that how we are committed to do that. But that will be a long process. We cannot just change it without consultation. We cannot shove the change the citizenship without the diverse group who are also the subject of this discrimination. And also we have to deal with many other people who should be in the part of this process. So we are starting that kind of consultation, but you can imagine that it's not a so easy one. So we have we started some kind of consultation and some kind of work with the people that we are working together. And then there are recommendations, from the situation from the ground, as well as some of the academic and expert recommendation, we were to work together. Without that, we cannot guarantee the citizenship rights, and we cannot guarantee the protection of everyone without discrimination. Yep.
Thank you, Minister Mew. I said that I would like for all the speakers to take 2 minutes before we close. But if that's okay, I just want to bring just one last question. I'm sorry for the others who are not able to accommodate during this session, but this question actually relates to everything that also the speakers are directly linked to the accountability, and everybody is sharing with you from the ground situation update. So the question is from Leanne from the US Embassy in Rangoon. Thanks for all the speakers as well as the organizer. My question is about the humanitarian situation in the Northwest, as Salai mentioned, particularly in Khin State, but we have also seen new displacement and refugees in Salai and Magwe regions, where we have hardly seen in the past, and where there are few established humanitarian organizations which could respond to the current situation, particularly in Salai and Magwe. While the speakers are focusing on accountability, the most urgent issue for now is a humanitarian response in newly displaced areas. How do you think it should be responded, or can you tell us the intervention of the UN agencies and intergovernmental, of any? So anybody would like to take this question?
Well, yes, Ohmar, I think just quickly,
Yes.
I think rightly so, the humanitarian dimension, of course, is foremost in its, urgency. Yeah. Again, this will require also the agreement by the junta. But I think there needs to be a renewed effort by the international community to really pressure on the junta to allow humanitarian assistance to break through into the country. One possible point, of course, is to go through the area that borders with Thailand and to work across the border. That may require the say-so of the Thai government. So I think it's important to spotlight this issue and somehow to get it out into the public that if there's going to be any immediate humanitarian relief of any effectiveness, it will have to be done through the border on that borders in Thailand, and that has now been held up because Thailand is not agreeing on that for reasons, of course, that we understand. It has to do with the pandemic and other issues, but for the moment, that is our only hope, and that is that all pressure should be directed to getting aid through the areas that border with Thailand, and that is the area that has been all along the most amenable to cross-border movements between the two sides. So we may talk about the AHA Center and all that, but that is not going to happen anytime soon.
Thank you, Park. Thank you. So if I don't see anyone to respond to the humanitarian question, can I actually just read out one question directing to the NUG, but not to answer now? I would like propose the NUG to answer it, and perhaps even in the NUG's formal communication to the public. But I will just go ahead and read it. But Minister Myo, please take a note of this question. Thank you very much. I want to point out 2 ministers in NUG are opposed to the Rohingya issue publicly last 6 years in the past. And these 2 ministers are now working for 2 NUG ministries right now. How can these 2 ministers be held accountable for their mistakes? How can the NUG government guarantee to protect the Rohingya with law in Myanmar rather than supporting the Rohingya issue? So we will send you the written one, Minister Myo. If you will bring it to the NUG and respond to the public, would be appreciated. Thank you so much. With that, now may I call on Siamas Htoo, if you would take 1 minute, your last remark, final remark, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Ohmar. Yeah, we all saw the news that ICC prosecutor has opened an investigation into the situation in Ukraine. And just want to mention that the jurisdictions for the investigation is from Ukraine previously submitted Article 12 versus 3, right? So given that recent invasion by Russia, the prosecutor became more interested and also said that he intends to start the process to open investigation, right? So Myanmar situation also possible for using Article 12 verse 3 declaration, because NUG publicly announced that article in August. So there's possible for us, right, to refer the case. So yeah, we are hopefully everything is we are advocating now. So we are aware that we will push more for the Myanmar accountability. So thank you for everyone.
Thank you, Siamatutu. Siaso Oak, please take the floor for your final remark.
Thank you so much. Yeah, today we had the opportunities to talk about the need for accountability and the need to end impunity and atrocities in Burma. But as some of the questions have been forwarded, while we are also talking about all of these important issues, there are people who are now facing dire situation in the country, and we should not forget about them. And these people are still living in fear and fleeing from their homes, and fleeing from attacks by the military. They need food, they need water, they need healthcare, everything. So we should start immediately looking into how we should best provide assistance to these people, the IDPs, the refugees, not just on the Thai-Burma border, but the India-Burma border. We should not forget them. We have hundreds of thousands of people displaced all over across the country. In western part of the country, we have in Chin State nearly a fifth of the population is now being displaced and cut off from the rest of the country without food supplies, and they are stuck and trapped within Chin State, and some have fled into India, and there's a little support or no support at all from the international community. And we should start, the international community should start looking into how best to reach these communities, not just being reliant on the bureaucratic hurdles and all the the political considerations. Get the resource and people, there are ways to distribute and means to deliver much needed humanitarian aid to these people. So please do work with people on the ground and hear from the voices from the community-based organizations, CSOs working in these areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CSO. Can I call on to Razia, please?
Thank you so much again. It is difficult, but not impossible. We all together can change the situation. And one thing, recently I said the hate speech is again increasing. So everyone we experienced in the 2012, 2015, even in the 2017. So we should be concentrated on this issue. For me, Burma, because I feel so comfortable when I say Burma. I don't know where. Whatever is happening inside Burma, it hurts me. Maybe I am Rohingya because I have a caste. So this is not my problem. My problem is why others are not accepting us as they are one of them. Because I have the feeling, everyone, for my born, because I born in Myanmar. Once my father asked me, because my eldest sister, she born in Bangladesh, but I born, is this fate? And why you have so much feeling about your country? Because you didn't see too much your country. And I told my father, I don't know, if anything related to Burma, I feel so excited. I feel so sad. So I am with everyone, with those sisters, mothers, brothers who are now under atrocity, and we have to be together and hold our hand together. No more nation, no more difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sister. We have to hold hands together. Thank you so much. Minister Myo.
Thank you. Yeah, we cannot wait. Justice being delayed. And so I don't want to spend any round of this discussion for setting up the new thresholds, spending another 2 or 3 years, so that I don't want that kind of, repeating delay justice. Really need justice for everyone right now. It's being, many people dying and, being killed across the country. The military is using hate speech against the civilians, their own civilians. It's go beyond the war cry and crying against humanities, using hate cry, against their own people. So that kind of atrocity must be stopped immediately. And then the NUG, especially I would say particularly the Ministry of Human Rights, strongly committed on the justice. And also, we are willing to cooperate for the international justice systems. So declaration to the ICC is one thing, one action we have taken for specific situation. But we are also committed to assess the Rome Statute, which, member of the Rome Statute, we can do lots of, the future judicial and justice systems. And then that's where NUG must be recognized as a government for the proper things like that. That's why we are, calling for the recognition to make it more international, actions, agreements, and procedures. So that don't see that NUG is just claiming for the legal recognition, just for ourselves, for the justice of everyone, to make all the action should be speedy and, bringing justice back to the people.
Thank you, Minister Myo. Park Marzuki, please, may we have your final remark, please?
Yeah, yes, Ohmar. I think there's so many issues to be addressed, and I will just lay it out very, very frankly that that the international community's attention to Myanmar has somewhat receded. And this has, of course, been much more aggravated by the situation in the Ukraine. And so it's an uphill situation that we are facing here, because what is happening in Myanmar cannot be separated from what is happening elsewhere in the international community. Now, of course, 12.3 needs to be pursued. Claiming equal treatment by the ICC should be made quite clear to the ICC, because it is so noticeable that the response from the international community is so exceptional to Ukraine at the expense of Myanmar. And so this is a situation that needs to be addressed. We cannot spread our efforts too wide, because we need to be focused on an initiative that can break through the impasse at the moment. And what I see as a possibility, of course, is that while clearing, clarifying earlier that the declaratory act of the NUG is not membership of the Rome Statute, it is to activate the ICC, that there has to be so much more engagement, perhaps in this case, because of the statement of the United States, to be involved in this, and therefore special attention should be drawn to the United States to get much more involved in this. And therefore, I think there is a new momentum here, and this needs to be taken into account and benefited while we are discussing this at a side event in the UN. The focus has perhaps been on getting the Human Rights Council moving on a jurisdiction to be set up to start prosecutions. But at the end, it is how we draw attention of the international community to the situation in Myanmar. And that has now been amplified with the crisis in the Ukraine. And therefore, I think extra effort should be undertaken. Also, by appealing to the all the groups within Myanmar to be united, and to take also into account that at times international pressure in resolutions that deal with the situation in Myanmar may be overly focused on the situation of the Rohingyas, especially by the Organization of Islamic Conference. And so that has to be addressed also, so that there's no misunderstanding that the issue in Myanmar is not only with regard to the plight of what has taken place or experienced by the Rohingya. That is a tragedy, but it continues now with the Rohingya inside the country, but also with the other minorities. And therefore, this has to be seen in one unity. And therefore, coming back to how we address the situation, my hope now in the coming days is to get the United States much more involved and engaged on this issue.
Thank you very much, Park. Also, thanks also for your remark, a reminder for all of us in Myanmar to be in unity. I think it's very important, of course, and also the Spring Revolution over the past year onward has actually brought everybody together, as you all have seen. Even the young women from Myanmar, from the Burma majority areas, will go out to the street holding banners and signs in solidarity with the Rohingya sisters. Things like that never happened before. Like 6 years ago, that's something very, very far for us to see. But now there is this huge solidarity among and between the communities. And that is something that we really need to nurture, but also like I have been also sharing with the National Unity Government, proposing is also, this is the time the solidarity of the people can be transformed into the policy and law, so that regardless of there may be some odds, which we normally, we see that in every society, but the people's solidarity now, collective vision for federal democracy needs to be in that form of law and policies, so that, like Sister Rohingya said, the Rohingya community is a part of Myanmar, that everybody is like holding hands together in this unity. I think this is the first time unprecedented opportunity that Spring Revolution has ever given to us, that we really hope that we can continue to really mobilize and hold on to this for the peaceful future Myanmar, Burma. With that, I want to thanks to all of you for joining us today. Sorry for taking a bit longer than we scheduled, and also all your great comments and questions, many that we were not able to answer. But like I said, we will actually respond to you through our Facebook page. So please look into that. We will come back to you with the questions, answers and response. Also, my last point that I just want to report to all of you is that we have also been raising the issue here in the Human Rights Council, is the UN's repeated failure in engaging with Myanmar. The UN's previous silence before and prior and during the Rohingya genocide is something that we seriously look into, and we are calling on the UN Secretary General to show his leadership to address these past failures, which we are now very worried continue to be repeating again. The same mistakes are repeating, which we don't want to see that anymore. So with that, we are also raising our concerns and our messages to including those UN agencies and the country team in Myanmar, to really address all of the past failures, to ensure that this time the UN does not continue to respond the crisis in Myanmar with a business as usual approach, and that UN will fully support the will of the people of Myanmar for a federal democracy, bring about justice and accountability, and end the impunity of the Myanmar military. With that, thank you so much again for joining us today. Thanks to all our distinguished speakers, Minister Myo, Pak Marzuki, Siama Htoo, Siama Razia, and Sia Zo'ok. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.